If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Disconnected. I'm here with Jason Bene, who is a part of Culture Shock Releasing, writes for Delirium, loves movies, and I'm probably missing about 3 other things that we're going to get into. Jason, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Ryan. It's I know you've been trying a long time to have someone from Culture Shock on here, probably close to 2 years, so thank you for being patient.
Yeah, we I think we're about 3 months away from the 2-year anniversary of the first time I messaged Culture Shock. And to your credit, everybody said yes every time. It's just been a busy time for Culture Shock.
Yeah, and you're busy too. I know you have a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with your new company and stuff, so good luck on that.
Far too much. I just paused something upstairs to be able to come down here and be able to talk to you. So eager to do this.
Great, thank you.
Culture Shock Releasing. How long have you been with Culture Shock Releasing, first of all?
Around 2 years. Daniel and I have been friends for almost 15 years, and he started a VHS company called Lo-Fi Video.
Right.
And then eventually he decided to get into the Blu-rays and came up with Culture Shock Releasing. And I probably started about 2 years ago, and I kind of just talked my way into it. Like, I love films. I love physical media. I'm a collector. I'm a fan. And I wanted him as a friend to be successful, but I liked what he was doing, going after films that I think a lot of people, it wasn't on their radar. They weren't obvious choices. Even to me, who's worked at video stores for years, I was like, okay, I've heard of a few of your films, but these other ones are interesting. And so 2 years, I basically, Daniel acquires the films, gets the rights to them, works on the extra features, hires the artist for the slipcovers. I'm more on the PR side. I kind of handle the social media, the YouTube videos coming on, doing interviews and vidcast. I just feel like it's a good way to keep him from being overwhelmed, and he can focus on those inner workings, and I can handle the advertising and marketing, which I think is absolutely imperative that you do both. Right. We're in 2023, and I just think we're in a world of, you got to get your name out there, especially in the boutique label game. There's so many people. It's hard to keep track of everyone. If you're not waving your hands and saying, look, I'm here and we're putting out films, I think it's very easy to get lost in the shuffle.
That's absolutely true, and we'll dive more into that. But the Culture Shock Releasing, the way it all started, obviously for Daniel moving from the VHS side to the Blu-rays, I believe everything's headquartered out of Vegas, right?
Yeah, Daniel, years ago, I'm in California. He used to live in California. Now he's in Las Vegas. So yeah, basically everything's coming out of there. And which is great is I can kind of handle LA stuff if he needs, because we know everyone. Not everyone, but a lot of people live in LA and Hollywood. Right. That's where a lot of talent is. So if you're going to meet somebody in person, it's easier to have somebody like me who can go and do an interview, because that's where a lot of people are based. But, he's keeping busy over there too as well. There's a lot of events and, there's a lot of festivals and movie screenings that he attends in Vegas. So it's a good mixture. I mean, I actually haven't seen Daniel in person in 7 years.
Wow.
Which was a 2016 Monsterpalooza, which I think you've been to one before.
Yeah, went last year.
He had he was vending as Lo-Fi Video, and I remember going there to talk to him and help him out. But that's actually the last time I've seen him in person, so it's been a long time. So
wow.
We talk a lot on the phone and things like that. But so yeah, Las Vegas is the headquarters.
And there was some DVD releases and a couple really interesting releases before they became an OCN partner label, right?
Yeah, that was, some Donald Farmer films and some shot on video, kind of like the core of what, the label reflects the owner and what they like and what they grew up with. So a lot of that stuff that's Daniel's, comfort zone. And a lot of that's been moved over to Culture Shock. I don't want people to think, though, that we are a shot on video label. While there's nothing wrong with that, we've actually done a lot of film and a lot of new films that are digital, probably 4 at this point. And I just want there to be a balance because there's a lot of people, some people who really don't like shot on video.
Oh, yeah.
They just, the aesthetic, just the way it looks, they think it looks like a soap opera, or, if they hear shot on video, they kind of tune out a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's understandable. Everybody, has their opinion, but I just want people to know that we do a little bit of everything, old and new, film, shot on video, digital, and genre doesn't really matter. We bounce around to hit everything. So, yeah.
On that note, is there any sort of mission for Culture Shock releasing?
I don't think there's a mission, but I think there's definitely an underlying, we're going to put out things that you don't expect, that you don't see coming. Nobody saw Virgin High coming, because at that point, the closest that we came was to a sex comedy was probably just a comedy, which was Girlfriend from Hell.
Right.
And then, Late Night Classics came about I used to write for a website called Killer Film. I did a retrospective series called Late Night Classics, kind of a throwback to 80s and 90s films that weren't getting a lot of attention, but it was pretty broad. It covered all genres. And then with Culture Shock, Daniel was like, okay, I got a couple films I want to put out, a double feature of Virgin High and Hot Under the Collar. I said, let's do something that people won't see coming. Let's start a sub-label or subline that's really going to grab people's attention. And that was what Virgin High ended up being, and people didn't see it coming. They were surprised that we were doing it, because a lot of companies are shy about putting out sex comedies, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's because they don't feel it's going to sell well, or it's just not something people want, but I think it's the opposite. People are craving these kind of films because they're simple. They're almost review-proof in the sense that as long as they have some laughs and some TNA, it's done its job. And of all the movies that we've announced that are coming soon, which is Lone Wolf, The Refrigerator, and Late Night Classics Volume 2, which is Assault of the Party Nerds 1 and 2, the one that people want the most, that when's it going to be available for pre-order, is Late Night Classics Volume 2. So I think it's definitely going to be the glue for the label, is to go after these kind of films. And we already have Late Night Classics Volume 3 in the pipeline, which is a comedy from the 80s. It's never been on disc. If I say any more, people will probably guess it. Collectors are kind of like the Name That Tune version of you give somebody a clue and they can figure it out right away. And before you know it, the artwork is up online and you didn't even say anything because they're that good.
Right.
And then Late Night Classics Volume 4 is going to be a box set.
Wow.
And we've never done a set yet, so this will be the first. And it's definitely something people are going to want to buy. It might actually expand and be larger than the amount of movies we're putting on it. If I say any more, it's probably I've said too much. So this is definitely going to happen in 2024. And there's more horror. There's more 80s. There's more 90s. There's more cool stuff of all genres. And hopefully we can get those going really soon.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that we lost in the middle there. We're talking about the future. There's a lot of recent history to discuss a little bit too. After those DVD releases that were happening out of Vegas, all of a sudden Culture Shock Releasing was announced as a partner label at OCN. So how and why did that come about?
I still remember Daniel calling me, and I'm a big Vinegar Syndrome fan, and I'm a subscriber of 4 years. So I get it. And he said, they reached out to me. Justin O' Liberty reached out and was wanting to know if we wanted to become a partner label. And I said, sign up today. Don't even, because at that time, nobody had really knew who Culture Shock was, unless you followed the Facebook page. It was kind of underground and not many people were, it's a small company. And I go, you got to make the leap forward, man. You have to, you work out the contract, you work out the numbers, you see what works best for you. But trust me, you're going to have that many more people buying your films. And there's 2 months a year, was it June and December, that are partner label month. For 2 months, you're going to have whatever new product you put out on the front of that page, and everybody's going to see it. And then people are going to start bundling what they buy from the website.
Right.
They're going to pick up something, and then they're going to get a little discount on the subscription and pick up some of your movies. They're going to take photos of it. They're going to share it to social media. That's how you can go viral. That's how you get more people looking at your product. And that's how you grow. And it was just, and he kind of already knew he was going to do it. I was just kind of backing him up and going, look, yes, I mean, it's an easy decision to make. If I'm in your shoes, I do it. And he did. And we were there for 2 years and put out at least 16 Blu-rays and, very successful. Some movies did better than others. If you would have told me Girlfriend from Hell and Virgin High slipcovers would sell out quicker than the horror films, I wouldn't have believed it. But I just think it shows you, there's a market for everything.
That's true. So you were there for 2 years, put out around 16 movies. So what happened this year? How come out of nowhere, I think it was July, right? July, you guys announced a release and also announced that you were not going to be a partner label anymore.
It kind of started earlier in the year. We, as you know, a few people have left OCN for various reasons. Fun City Editions left. TerraVision left. So that was Ryan Graveface and Brad Henderson. And they do great stuff. And they had reached out to Daniel about joining them at graveface.com. And again, Daniel ran it by me, and I don't make final decisions. I'm just kind of like a second opinion. I said, look, I think you peaked with OCN. Just the format of one movie a month, that's 12 movies a year. I don't know how much more you can grow doing it that way. And I feel like you'll have more freedom with Graveface on what you can do, how you could promote stuff, maybe even talk about things a little early, where I think to get people excited about what you're putting out. And it was a no-brainer. TerraVision releases the kind of films that Culture Shock does. Very similar. Old and new, all genres, film shot on video. And those guys are great and supportive. And it was already set up that when our contract lapsed with OCN, that we were ready to jump right in with Graveface distribution. And I think it caught people by surprise. I mean, there really was no warning. I guess the heads up was, I think it was July 1st. And people are very knowledgeable, and they saw that all of our movies had went to the out of print section. So we kind of had to make an announcement after that, nip it in the bud and go, look, it's true. We are moving on, but we're not going away. And I think that was the most important thing. It wasn't that we were leaving OCN.
Right.
We need to let you guys know that we're still in existence and we're not going away. Because we live in that age of people can forget about you really quick.
Well, on that note, in the most respectful way possible, you announced that you're leaving OCN, and then there was dead silence from Culture Shock for almost 2 full months. What is happening in those 2 months?
Well, there wasn't complete silence, but it was, we announced the film fairly, off the bat was Night of the Bastard, which is a new film, came out last year, and that's available for pre-order right now through graveface.com and cultureshockreleasing.com. I just don't think that movie pulled in maybe the attention that, let's say, Late Night Classics Volume 2 is going to do.
Well, that wasn't announced until almost the end of August, I believe, right? So
yeah, we wanted to get our ducks in a row.
Got it.
we didn't want to, stumble over our feet and get ahead of ourselves and announce stuff. We want to make sure we got approval from the new boss, right? You're starting somewhere new and you don't want to step on anybody's toes, and you want to make sure you're doing it professionally. And so trust me, behind the scenes, we were itching to let everybody know everything. And we still are to an extent with what's coming out next year. So
Right.
it did take a while, but that's why I jumped on social media and tried to stay active as I could without letting everybody know everything that's going on. So once we got Night of the Bastard announced, then we were able to cut a promo trailer that previewed our next 3 releases with footage. I think that kind of reinvigorated us and the fan base, and things
Right.
have slowed down. But people need to realize behind the scenes, there's a lot that goes into this. We went from a huge company, perhaps the biggest boutique label out there, to basically Daniel and I and a few other people. So it's a small group of fans and people who love this stuff that are trying to get it out. It's just, I don't know, people know the inner workings of how hard it is to just put out one movie. I just think people got used to maybe a movie a month from us or every other month. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, only one film and what's next? So
Right.
I get it. There was a period of quiet, but trust me, we couldn't wait to let everybody know what was going on.
So now that we're back up to present, does that mean that we're going to be back up to that one a month and maybe increased from there soon?
I hope so. I mean, the extras are being worked on for Late Night Classics Volume 2. Richard Gabai, who stars in the films, who directed them, is working on extra features. But if you've ever bought one of our films, we do a really good job with the amount of extra features we have. So it's not a rush job to get it out there just to say it's out there. Right. There's got to be a good amount of features. Or what happens if we go too quick and something's wrong with the disc? And that's been happening with a lot of different labels. So I think quality control behind the scenes has to be important. And we can't just put it out there just to say, here it is, and then have people returning product because things are not working. I think once we can get to January and we can get caught up on The Refrigerator and Lone Wolf and, Assault of the Partners 1 and 2, then these other movies will fall in line. I mean, there's at least 15, 20 movies that are in the, line in the wings, just waiting to come out, or different, areas of completion. So it's coming soon.
That is coming up. We're looking forward to January. But now I really kind of want to dive into some of the actual films that Culture Shock has put out, because there's, this tendency for people to buy films when they get released, but really not go back into a catalog until there's some sort of super deep sale or something like that. But there's a lot of fun stuff that Culture Shock has put out that I really think needs highlighting. Some of the stuff that you guys have put out, Raw Nerve has been one of the big ones for a lot of people. Night Ripper, Girlfriend from Hell is one that people fell in love with immediately. That was a really smart first title to put out with OCN. Deathcember, the anthology film. Devil Rider was a big one. But then there's stuff like Game of Survival that I feel like has an immediate fan base for people that take a chance on it and they start to spread the word. So what are some of the ones that you have really appreciated in the catalog that you think people, if you haven't paid attention, that should really go back to right now?
Raw Nerve, I'm glad you mentioned that first. It didn't sell well.
Right.
And it's got a great cast. It's David Pryor, and it's a thriller, and it's early 90s, and it just, it's, I don't know why it didn't click with people. It only is starting to move now because it's been discounted on the Vinegar Syndrome website. But for some reason, it didn't click with people. And it still blows my mind. I don't think you can ever predict what's going to do well. And Game of Survival is the same way. I don't know, kind of this, weird alien post-apocalyptic, kind of crazy film. But again, neither one of them caught on right away. But the people who've seen it have liked it. I mean, Raw Nerve's got Tracy Lords, and it's got this, was it Randall Tex Cobb, who used to be a boxer, and it's got a very eclectic cast, and it just didn't connect with people, and it really caught me off guard. I was like, damn, you can never say what's going to do well and what's not.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, December is a new film. It's new, and it's got that negative thing going against it, which it has the number 20 in front of it. You know, if it's a movie from the 2000s or 2010s or 2020s, people kind of like, I'm not buying that. It's like, well, the amount of extra features on that's probably the most we've done with any film. And it's an anthology, and one of the segments was very controversial. It was like an animated segment, and it got pulled from the initial Blu-ray release. It was put out before. We actually went back and added it to the film. So you are getting a different film. The fact that, this uncensored, video is back on the film, and you have a ton of extras, and we work with Epic Pictures. That's who we recorded the film from. It's loaded, and it's a great release. As is a movie called Thrust. It's the best way to describe it is if John Waters directed a trauma film. It's that, a lot of bad taste, a lot of, it's going to push the buttons that you might not want to, and got Linnea Quigley, but it's a newer film, and I think that's another one that just kind of went over people's heads. And I think when they play catch up, they'll learn that some of these movies are really cool. I hope people are more open-minded to checking out everything, but I do understand the cherry picking mentality that you don't need to own everything. I understand that because I do the same thing.
As everyone should. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And it's more evident today, and you and I have talked about this in the past. There's so many companies out there. It's very easy to one, feel overwhelmed just with the sheer number of releases being thrown at your face, but two, to really, even if you're cherry picking and only choosing things that sound amazing to you, you're still likely to be, under a massive unending pile of watches that you're not getting to.
Well, you know how we're in October now and everybody's got their 31 days of Halloween challenge.
Yep.
I have a challenge every month just to try to keep up with the movies I buy.
Yeah.
Or what comes out in theaters or what's on television. So my challenge is just when the weekend comes to watch as much as I can, because during the week, I just don't have the time.
Right.
So those things are not even in my mind when I'm, like today, I'm going to go see Exorcist. And then tonight I'm going to come home and watch, what is it on Amazon? Totally Killer.
Yeah.
A Blumhouse film. And then Chucky just started season 1. And then I'm doing American Horror Story. And then I'm doing a show called Surreal Estate on Sci-Fi Channel. I'm like, holy shit, I'm tired just thinking about watching all those, right?
Right.
And none of that's physical media. That's just what's on my TV and what's at the theater. And so you jump into like our movies and it's like, I can't keep up. I don't have a lot of space either,
Let's get into that side too then. What is your history with film itself? How did you get to this point?
I started watching movies probably way too young.
Didn't we all?
Well, we're talking 4 years old young. We're talking Jaws on the big screen, Jaws and Race with the Devil on a double feature when I'm 4. And then watching movies when I was like 10 years old, watching Scanners, The Fog, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Funhouse in a theater. And then renting movies on video in the late 80s, and eventually working at a video store. From 1992 to 2006, I worked at Blockbuster, I worked at Suncoast and DVD Planet. So I was always consumed and wanted to be surrounded by film. That was my comfort zone. And eventually I started writing for a website, which turned into writing for Fangoria and Gore Zone and Delirium, which I've been almost there for 10 years, to bumping into Daniel at these signings that used to happen at a brick and mortar video store called Sputnik's Movie Empire in Van Nuys, California. He was there at every one. We would hang out, and eventually we started doing conventions together and going to screenings and actually even being extras in films together. To him opening up, Lo-Fi Video, which led to Culture Shock, led to me helping him out and trying to make it as successful as possible. So to me, it was like this was my destiny. And I think in life, everybody has it, something that makes you happy. And hopefully you find it and you kind of surround yourself with it.
Right.
Because I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I wouldn't want to be doing, this is where I want to be, what I want to be talking about and watching. And it's a no-brainer for me. This is where I want to be. And it's always been there. It's like, you can't make somebody become a fan like we are or anybody. You either get it or you don't. And horror is just not for everybody. Even though I like all film, horror is, I always come back to it. So to me, it's just, now my daughter, who never liked it, she used to walk by my movies when she was really young and see all the horror films. And she would go, Daddy, zombie spooky crazy. That was just her name for all my movies. And I was like, you're right. There's a lot of zombie spooky crazy. But now she's a little older and all these trailers are playing on TV, like Five Nights at Freddy's and all these, and it's clicking. I didn't know if she was my daughter. I thought it would have something that always would have been there, but it's an acquired taste and I was never going to force it upon her, but she's come around and now she wants to see stuff. So I just have to pick which ones she wanted to see. Saw X. And I said, no, you're 5-6 years away from that. Let's Exorcist. Yeah. You'll be okay.
Please tell me that you've shown her a triple feature now of Zombie, the Spookies, and the Crazies.
I mean, I have zombie films, and George Romero did the Crazies, and
right, and Spookies.
Yeah, I mean, we watched a couple films when she was younger, but I don't think it meant anything. Like we went and saw Goosebumps and Goosebumps 2 in theaters.
Yep.
So I was trying to bring it out of her, and she enjoyed them, but next day she didn't even think about the films. But now she's getting into it, so it's kind of cool. I'm thinking about what's coming out and what we can see and not see, and that's a good bonding thing to have with your kid.
What is and I'm only asking this because I'm at that stage. I've got an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old. What is the one film, horror or not, that you're like, I cannot wait to show her this movie? You know what?
Gremlins.
It's a good one.
And I think she's right there because you remember that's the era of, thanks to Spielberg, we got the PG-13 rating, whether it was producing Poltergeist and Gremlins or directing Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom. He was pushing that boundary of it's not quite R, it's not quite PG, but Gremlins, I think, while it's got its gory parts, it's still fun. It's camp. It's a good time.
Yeah.
And it's silly monster stuff. And I think that's a definite gateway film.
Oh, yeah.
And I think so, Gremlins. And Christmas is coming, so maybe it's a good time to it's a Christmas horror film, by the way. I don't know if people think it's not, but it is.
Of course it is.
Some people will argue silly stuff like that.
Right. It's got so many connections to everything else, too. It is kind of one of the perfect gateway films because you've got Dante, you've got the horror side, you've got Dick Miller, you've got so much in that you can just go, oh, you like that? Well, let me show you this. And now all of a sudden there's a net of these amazing films that you can just hand out.
Well, you could always follow it up with, Gremlins 2, the new batch.
Of course.
And that's the great thing about him as a director is he never really went too hardcore.
Yeah.
There was always a sense of fun, and whether it's The Burbs or Burying the X or The Hole or, Matinee, he always kind of had that fun horror films. He's the fun horror film director.
I would agree there. Yeah, he's pretty great.
So
other than horror, what are some things that you really lean into heavily?
I never really realized how much I love comedies, especially from the era of the 80s. Like I was thinking if I did a top 5 list for comedies for the 80s, it would be Running Scared with Billy Crystal and Gregory Hines, Cheech and Chong's next movie. What is it? A Christmas Story. What's the other one? Summer School with Kirstie Alley and Mark Harmon. But you see there's a theme.
Oh, yeah.
They're kind of late, or what, The Man with Two Brains or Jekyll and Hyde Together again. Just fun, some of them politically incorrect, probably wouldn't go over very well in today's age, but just a different time. I mean, I think movies connect with you. Like, I was in my teens in the 80s. So all those movies worked on a different level for me. Most of them I caught on cable late at night on Saturday, and just, it brings you back to a different time in your life. Perhaps you watch them with family or friends. Some of those family are no longer with you. So it kind of is like a time machine. Like, it's everything is a product of its era, and you just feel like movies are just, you're watching them for the films, but you're also watching them for all these other things that it can connect with.
Yeah, I don't think we talk enough about how movies can be almost transportational. If you watch something, you can literally zoom back to a night in July of 1988 and feel what you felt there, see exactly what you saw, have the smells rush back towards you. I've got certain films that I will connect with because it's something that I watched for the first time with a family member, and they had an incredible experience. And it's amazing how it can pull that magic trick of suddenly it's 2006 for you again, and you can't even control that.
It makes me think of a time I was probably 20 years old, and for whatever stupid reason, I didn't have health insurance. And I used to love to play basketball, and I threw out my back, and I never went to the doctor. And I think it was a slip disc. I think it was a slip disc, maybe more than one, was shooting pain down my legs, to where I'm this 20-year-old guy and I could barely walk.
Yep.
And I was popping like Motrin and putting Icy Hot on my back. And I remember there was a rotation of films I kept watching on VHS. And one was Running Scared, one was RoboCop. And I kept watching it. It was like balancing out my depression of this pain and what the hell. And that's what movies do. They just bring you joy in different ways. I think all of us can go back to movies from childhood to teen, maybe even as an adult, that we just escape into a different world. I mean, we all have ups and downs, and we all have things going on. Everybody's got a story. But movies is what brings us all together. And it's cathartic. It's needed, man. It really is. Because look, I don't do drugs. I don't drink alcohol. I don't even smoke cigarettes. My vice is what's behind me and what's behind you.
Yep.
Cinema.
I relate to that wholeheartedly. One thing that we haven't gotten into too much, though, is writing. You've written for Fangoria, Gorezone, Delirium since the dawn of time. Why keep writing? What do you get out of writing for these publications?
Damn, I'm not that old. The dawn of time?
Delirium is, you've been there forever.
No, you know what? I've always enjoyed interviewing people. Like, I've never wanted to be one of those writers that just writes my opinion.
Right.
And sits at a computer and just types away 10,000 words.
Yeah.
And some people are great at it. I'm not one of those people, but I'm good at like what we're doing. Let's just sit down either in person or on the phone. We do a phone interview and just let's dissect. To me, I just love the interview process. I love that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And for me, I had to reach out. I started writing for a website, but to write print, nobody's going to come knocking on your door.
Right.
It just doesn't work that way. You have to reach out to people. And I emailed Chris Alexander, who was writing for Fangoria, and I was able to link some of the work I had done so he could click and see, okay, this guy wants to write, but he's got something to back it up with. Here's some article, here's some interviews, here's some reviews. And he was very, come on, dude, go get something. This is not, you have to go out and reach out to people. That's what I don't think some people realize. They're not going to come to you, as you know, for interviews. You have to go find them. So I printed a business card and went to conventions and screenings or went on social media. And I just, I knew there was going to be a panel and this person was going to be on stage. It's Mick Garris or whoever, or they're just walking around. That was the beauty of the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors or Monster Palooza. And as a fan, I know who they are. I know what they look like. So you go up professionally and shake their hand and, hey, my name is Jason. I want to interview you. Here's my card. And they usually had a business card. And a week later, you're on the phone interviewing them. And it's great. And eventually it ends up printed, and nobody can take that away from you. Print.
So out of everything that you have written and been a part of in publication, what is one of these interviews that has been the most personally impacting for you?
Man, there's so many, but I was just thinking about some recently that I haven't discussed. I love Jill Sholin, and I really like the film Popcorn.
Yeah.
And it's like a nice throwback to like William Castle, and it doesn't really get talked about as much as her other films like Stepfather and Phantom of the Opera and The Curse 2 and Cutting Class and When a Stranger Calls Back. And so it was very cool to get to speak to her on the phone. And she's got this very like husky voice. It's not traditionally feminine, but I've always had a crush on her. So it's kind of weird to be on the phone and going, oh my God, I'm talking to somebody whose films I grew up watching.
Yeah.
And the best thing about that interview was when it was over and we were kind of like off the record, I was like, have you thought about doing conventions? Because I think she left the industry to just start a family. If you look at her like resume, it kind of cuts off really like mid-90s. And that happens to a lot of people. They just start a family and they don't have time, or it's not the number one priority anymore. And I said, you should do conventions because fans would love to see you. And you've just done so many cult favorites that you're going to do really well. And I'm not sure if it was my nudging her in that direction, but eventually she started doing them like shortly after. Nice. So that to me was gratifying because look, I was helping her out. And ironically, I was doing a Delirium signing at Dark Delicacies in Burbank. She grew up in Burbank. She wasn't part of the signing I was at. She walked in as a customer.
Nice.
And she remembered me, and I can actually send you the photo. It's just so out of the blue, and it made everything worth it. But that's one in particular that I'm like, that meant something beyond just a fanboy talking to a celebrity. It's just two normal people having a discussion. So that one sticks with me, It's one of my favorites.
Interesting. With Delirium, has that relationship led to anything else for you? Like you've been able to reach out to other people or make relationships because of the writing there?
It really hasn't. It's still, my life has been very, nothing's going to come easy. It just never has. And maybe it's not supposed to be. If I didn't reach out, I would have never wrote for a magazine. Maybe the next step is to do interviews and extra features, which I know you're wanting to do. But as you're learning, you got to seek people that, it doesn't, at least for me, it doesn't come my way. It hasn't really led to anything other than continually cranking out interviews for print. But that's okay, because I didn't get into it to be rich or famous. That's not going to happen. There is an award that you can get for writing called the Rondo Awards. That happens yearly. I don't need a nomination. I don't need a win to be validated. But man, I've never been nominated once. But I think it's the cult of personality.
Right.
If I still wrote for Fangoria and I had more, of a presence that way, and, everybody knows Fangoria. It's been around since 1979. You're going to get more attention. Delirium's kind of like, it's not on everybody's, at the top of their head. And so it would be nice to get a nomination or an award, but it's not why I do it. But I can't say I wouldn't want it. I mean, who wouldn't want to be recognized for doing your job? I mean, it is what it is, Maybe you could do an award ceremony. I know you started to do award ceremony on your show. So
sure did, yeah.
Yeah, but it would be nice. But has it led to anything? No. I still have to reach out to people. I still have to, put my head down and keep chugging, and that's okay. Maybe it's not supposed to be simple.
So to bring it back to current times again, we got all these films that have been announced as coming from Culture Shock. Let's go through some of these. Night of the Bastard. Why should people consider that film and possibly pre-order it right now?
it's a fun throwback to like 70s films. It's a very much like a siege film. It's gory. It's violent. It's not been seen by many people. It got a very small festival run. So with us releasing it, it's its home video debut. And it's a good time. And I think if people give it a chance and not look at it was a 2022 film and have an open mind, they're going to enjoy it. And you have to realize that there's a theme with a lot of our films. It's kind of like you kind of see what we're about. It's going to be very much exploitation, horror, sex comedies with a little bit of splash of other genres. But
right.
If you're willing to be, a little bit adventurous and think outside the box with your collecting, I mean, I think you'll be rewarded, for $24.99 with a great slipcover with a naked woman on it and, a fun film. I mean, I really think people should take a chance on Night of the Bastard. And I think Lone Wolf, late 80s werewolf film that probably nobody's even seen or heard of, and gory, and it's got a rock and roll theme to it, and it looks like of its time with the big hair and the clothes, and it has that aesthetic that people love. And The Refrigerator, have you even heard of The Refrigerator before we announced it?
Oh yeah.
Which is interesting is when the attack of the refrigerator was announced, everybody thought that was The Refrigerator.
Right.
And they didn't realize, well, we have this film, they're not quite the same, but everybody thought that Refrigerator that TerraVision put out was what we had put out.
Right.
So our film was a little bit more recognizable. We have an idea for like possibly a lenticular slipcover where the refrigerator door is closed and it swings open. So we've never done one of those. So hopefully we can make that happen. And Assault of the Partners 1 and 2, it's a sex comedy. So if you want Rhonda Shear and Linnea Quigley and Michelle Bauer and, a fun time and kind of like Revenge of the Nerd ripoffs, then you're going to enjoy those films.
How about some hints on these other ones that you said you didn't want to drop hints? Anything that I can coax out of you?
Let's see. We do have a Brink Stevens film that's not a late night classic that's coming from the early 90s. That's never been on disc, so it would be. Stop thinking. I can already see you. You're going to figure it out. I can see your brain turning. You're going to go look it up as soon as this interview is done.
I've already figured it out and messaged you in the chat for confirmation. I'm just kidding.
Also, another a thriller from the 90s.
Nice.
Can't really give a hint on who's in it because it would be a very quick cross-reference and you would know what it was.
Right.
A 90s creature feature that's never been on disc. That a lot of people have actually requested, so that is coming soon. And I'm always on my phone researching and sending pictures to Daniel. I'll be bored on my break at work and I'm just going through and I'm like, I send him like this big bulk folder of like 25 posters. And I'm like, do you know none of those have been on DVD or Blu-ray? Just so he has it for a reference point so he can go, these are movies to go after.
Right.
I would love to announce more, and maybe I can come back and be a little bit more open and transparent with what I can announce. But as you know, there's we can't.
And stuff can fall through, and who knows? There's always problems. I mean, manufacturing for everybody across the board right now is a major delaying point. So I get it.
It is. I think that's slowing down quite a few people, and yeah.
Well, anything else exciting for you coming up that's not part of Culture Shock that you want to highlight at all? Delirium articles that you want to point to specifically about to drop or anything?
The next Delirium should be out soon. It's got the Sentinel on the cover, the 1977 horror film. I got an article with a friend of mine. His name is Al Magliochetti. He's a visual effects artist. So he worked on a lot of films from the 80s like King Kong Lives, Prom Night 3, Jason Goes to Hell. So we're kind of doing like somewhat like a career retrospective, kind of highlighting some of the movies he's done work on.
Nice.
I'm always like to shine the spotlight on people that you might not know who they are,
Right.
and kind of introduce you to somebody new. Like some people might want to go after the big dogs, right? They want to go for Rick Baker or Rob Bottin if you're talking makeup artist, or James Cameron as a director, or Robert Rodriguez. I will gladly interview them if the opportunity comes. But I get just as much satisfaction going after people that maybe I know who they are because I've watched their films. And it's just kind of introducing people to somebody that they might not know who they are. That's, to me, the most gratifying part of doing writing and being a journalist and things like that, is going after different talents that you might not see coming.
Exactly.
I mean, it's great to see, both of us are happy with what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we're looking to do other stuff. And, hopefully people see these videos and realize that, hey, here's somebody that, can help us with our Blu-ray releases and do audio commentaries and extra features. Because I think that's one of your focal points.
Oh, yeah. Already doing quite a bit of those. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I know one or two of them, but I won't say what they are.
Well, we'll talk after. Jason, thanks for all your time. This has been a lot of fun. Everybody needs to check out the links for Culture Shock in the description below. There's a lot of exciting things coming out, and I think the move to TerrorVision hopefully will bring a brighter light towards Culture Shock, so you're not swallowed up by all of the other partner labels surrounding you.
Thank you, Brian, for having me on. I appreciate it.
We'll talk again soon. Thanks, Jason. Thank you for listening to the Disconnected Podcast. There's one big thing that you could do to help the show, and that is to leave a rating and review on the podcast service of your choice. Thank you.
Hello, Chris Haskell from They Live by Film. For those of you that don't know, Adam and Zach and I, we've built a show over the last 2 years that's a combination of film discussion from three very different perspectives, as well as industry interviews with the leaders in the boutique Blu-ray and 4K community. For the interview portion, we started out with Craig and Dennis over at Deaf Crocodile, who were kind enough to give us time. And over the about 2 years or so, we've been lucky enough to already speak with Arrow, Severin, Mondo Macabro, Vinegar Syndrome, TerrorVision, Radiance Films, Indicator, most of the OCN partner labels. It's been a blast. You can find us on Anchor or wherever you podcast under They Live by Film. And if you listen, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you.